Okay, we're here. This is Sabattus Historical Society. My name is Mike Delorier, and my video man is Adam Rinko, and we're here to speak with Mrs. Ruth Wheeler. Hello, Ruth, and she has lived here many, many years. Let me see, were you born in the town of Sabattus, Ruth?
Yes, I was, on Elm Street.
And what year was that?
1931.
So that makes you 94 years old.
Yes, yeah.
So, and actually you were born in town.
I was born in town,
Right.
yeah.
I noticed when we spoke, you mentioned about, people being born in home. Could you just say that for the folks about how it was back then when the physicians actually had to come to the house to deliver the baby?
Delivered the baby, yes. Yeah. And we didn't even know my mother was going to have a baby. And my father scooped us all up and took us away so that the doctor could have the bedroom and have the room. And we thought we saw him coming up the street, walking up the street with his Boston bag, Dr. Wyman, and we figured that he had the baby in the bag, and we were all excited. How things have changed.
Oh, they really have. But I thought that was just such a neat little story, because people don't understand how hard it was, though, to get because when medical things arose.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't just call 911.
No.
It was your deal to fix the situation. So how many places have you lived in Sabattus?
Let me see. I was born on Elm Street, and then I got, we lived on Elm Street. My folks had a home on Elm Street. And then I got married in 1950, and I went and lived up on High Street. The little house in the corner there. It belonged to my husband's aunt, Lola Walker. And we lived there for 2 years. And I had my daughter, Linda. She was born in April. And then 2 years later, we moved up on Elm Street into an apartment house. And then 2 years later, we were going to have my son, and we figured we had to have more room. So they had a lot of houses in town here for sale. It was right after it was in 52, 54, along through there. There was this house here. There was what they call the Garland House upon Elm Street. The other house on Main Street. There was one on Main Street where Olivet and Kenneth Spencer lived. And one down in the country where Yvonne Winslow lived. They were all for sale. And we chose to buy this one here for $5,200. And we got a GI loan. We paid $35.72 a month payments. And at the time, my father said, "You kids are not going to be able to swing it." He said, "It's going to be too much for you. Time you pay the upkeep, make your payment, pay your taxes, and things." He's afraid we were going to lose it. But we didn't. I went to work in the mill, the Cowan Mill in Lewiston, to learn how to spin. And I worked over there for 34 years. And then I worked at all the mills as they closed down. I worked there, spinning. I worked down to the Farmsworth in Lisbon. And I worked at there was one on Beach Street in Lewiston. I worked at all the mills as they finally closed down. And that was when the shoe shops all started closing down too. Things was getting really,
Yeah, they all thinned right out.
Thinned right out, yeah. And I think it was because of after the war, we were rationed food and everything. And we didn't have nothing hardly. And I think that the women all went to work in the shipyard and things like that because the men they drafted them all in the service. And they got independent and they liked this, and that's what started it, I think of. And they come out with brand names and things like that. Years ago, we didn't have brand names. We all was equal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what it did. And then everybody started, the women started getting real independent because they were working. And I think that's what really started things that time,
Yeah.
We all tried to buy our kids everything that we never had.
Right. Yeah, that really did happen. It's much like you explained, and as I look back even upon when I was younger, you never realized that you didn't have much money.
No.
Because nobody did.
No.
And I always considered myself, and I think lucky because we had a small family. There's only two of us, my brother and I. And almost everybody else had a little less than me, but I never realized that I didn't have that much either.
No,
I felt privileged.
There was 8 of us.
Yeah.
8 of us children. Yeah. We all had chores to do. We all had, and it had to be done. And we never talked back to our parents or anything. When they spoke, they meant it, and we didn't fool around. We had to every one of us make sure we made our bed before we went to school in the morning. My mother was very particular about making sure the beds was made. And if we didn't make the bed, we didn't go do what we wanted to do in the evening, because we didn't bother. So I'm getting up and you eat your breakfast. And my mother cooked big, there was 8 of us kids. And they cooked a great big thing of rolled oats. We were brought up on rolled oats for breakfast. And we ate it because there was nothing else if we didn't. And but we never, I don't know as we felt that we were poor. You know what I mean? We just, everybody else was the same. Yeah.
And you sort of learned as I spoke to you before, you sort of learned a work ethic right at home too, because each one of you had your job and you had to do it.
Yeah.
I remember maybe you could relate the job you had with the table.
Yeah.
And
yes. So every Friday, my mother, she was very particular about it. She used to we had a great big table and it was painted white, and around it used to have a trim of a color. So every year in the spring, when she done her spring cleaning, that table got painted again white. And one year it'd be a yellow, maybe, or a blue, or a red, or something. That changed the atmosphere and things. My mother never worked, but she sewed. She sewed everything. Our clothes, made all of our clothes, our jackets and everything out of old coats. She would take them and rip them apart in the seams and turn them wrong side out. And she knit all of our sweaters and mittens, and our clothes was all handmade. I remember we couldn't get so excited when it comes September we'd go down to the grain store. There was a grain store on Elm Street. And they brought the grain in bags and with flowers. And we'd go down there and pay 10 cents to get a grain bag. And all they had to do was, of course, wash them and everything and put elastic around the waist. And we had broomstick skirts, we called them. And that was what we went to start school with. And we used to pick beans. Lucy Vedetto, she was a school teacher, and there was Wales used to make beans for factory beans, string beans, and the truck would come in the morning with a flatbed, and we'd all get on that flatbed, kids, and Lucy was supervision of us, and we'd go to Wales and pick beans, and if we worked all week, we made $16 or something like that, and that bought us a new pair of shoes and stockings and underpants to start school with. But it was all the school kids. We was all on that flatbed truck there riding out to pick beans. Yeah.
It's real interesting how you had to live back in those days. But so where did you start school?
We started school on Green Street, which was the St. Armand home now. And we started there, and our school teacher was Zelda Kirshner, and she come from Lisbon, but there used to be boarding houses in town where there was mills and things, and there was a boarding house run by Dobbins up on Green Street, and she boarded there for the week because she was a school teacher, and it would be too far for her to travel back and forth every day. And there was this Dobbins man, and she met him, and they got married. And then her name was Stella Dobbins. And we went to school there, and then we went down to the high school, and there was, well, I don't know how many in each class, because there was only 6 of us in 1950. Yeah,
So, which grade did you go when you went down to the school on Main Street?
Oh, I don't know. It must have been 7th or 8th grade. I know at least had to be 8th grade, because we used to play basketball with the high school kids.
Yeah, because I know later on there's some people that they only went to that school until like the 3rd grade.
Yeah,
and then they went down.
Yeah, now, see, I don't know how, I can't remember.
That was after you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been after you. So during that age span, let's say, can you just talk about how you were with your friends and what you did for entertainment and what little kids were playing in those days and things like that?
Well, once we went to school, we played basketball. We had a basketball that we played with. But otherwise, we used to have an old tire from a car. We'd have a stick, and we would roll that around, and bat that tire around and stuff like that. But otherwise, we really didn't have no toys that I remember of. Nothing.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like on a day in the summertime, would you go swimming or?
Yes, down at the lake. Because we lived on Elm Street. When we lived on Elm Street, the lake was right behind the house. And of course, in the wintertime, we would go ice skating. We'd put ice skates on in the kitchen, and skate down over the bank, and go on the lake. And then we swam in the lake. Like I said, with Johnny Coben and my brother James, they used to go down back and they fish all the time at the dam. Yeah. The dam was there. And we found things to do, I remember my brothers was kind of hateful to me at times. I had a doll, and they'd hang it up in the tree and take a bat and bat it, or something like that to get me to cry.
It sounds like a brother, huh?
Yeah. Then another thing, we used to get our milk from my Uncle Ed, and he lived on Green Street. And my mother we'd get it in a jar, and she'd send me down there with that jar to get some milk for supper. And there was Lester and Raymond and John. They were my cousins. They lived there, and their mother had passed away when they were all kids. Their father brought them up by himself there. And he had a couple cows, and my mother would send me down, and the boys would tease me, and they'd milk the cow while I was there, and they'd squirt the milk in my face till I cried. And then they'd let me go home. So that's what we have for entertainment.
So basically, there was nothing organized in those days for kids like there is today.
No.
So you just have to make your own fun.
Yeah, and then when we went to school to play basketball, they were 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, right in with high school, because that wasn't that many. Yeah. I think the year that Johnny Coben graduated, there was only 2, him and Arlene Cabani. Do you remember Arlene Cabani?
Yes, yeah.
Those 2. There was only 2. And there was only 6 in our class. Jim Grant, he was the only boy, and the rest was all girls.
Wow.
And when we graduated.
Yeah.
In 51. Yeah.
And again, that's probably a lot of that has to do with the war, too.
Yeah.
Because we rolled right into the Korean War after the Second World War.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So, again, we tried to keep this with the age of you up to about the 6th or 7th grade. So after that, like in high school, how did, your entertainment and stuff, did it change a lot, or?
No, really, I think basketball was the main thing. Yeah. And I went to work in J.J. Newberry's when I was 16.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. You're right on. Go ahead. Yeah.
So I went to work at Newberry's when I was 16. We got out of school at 1:30. And when I got out at 1:30, the bus would pick me up in front of the schoolhouse. And I'd go to work until 6 at night. And then I'd ride the bus home. And I did that when I was and I worked there until I got married. And when I got married, I worked in Newberry's in the office, J.J. Newberry's on Lisbon Street. And I think we started in like 35 cents an hour. And I was in the office doing all their ordering for them because I had graduated from high school. And I was working there. And I married Kenneth. And he was 9 years older than I was. And he had some money that he'd saved up because he was in World War II and everything. And he said I'd work so much he didn't want me to work because I had to work till 6 o'clock at night. And he got out of work at 3 in the afternoon. So I didn't work there all that long after I got married. And I didn't go to work until I was I went to work when we bought our house in 52 to get our down payment. We had to have $500 for a down payment, and that was a lot of money then. A lot of money. Yeah.
And why don't you tell the people how long you worked when you finally did retire, how old you were?
Yeah, well, so I worked and closed down all the water mills. And then I went to work at Bates College. My brother worked at Bates College, and he got me a job there. I went in Bates College, and I was in my 60s then. And but I didn't retire till I was 83 in Bates College.
Yeah. That is impressive.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of people left with that much ambition.
Yeah, I worked in the food service, yeah.
Yeah.
And after I got through, they called me wondering if I'd like to come back again, and I said no. They said they got more work out of me than they did the young people.
Yeah. Can you think of just a few stories of what? Because, for instance, when you're talking about basketball at the town hall, there was also a lot of other events at the town hall that were. While you were in high school, and yet plays and things of that nature.
Yes, they had a lot.
And then even after that, the community would join in, and there was a lot of talent shows. Could you kind of tell the people a couple stories about that?
The talent shows?
Well, anything that
they used to have minstrel shows, and that was when they let them come up. We had some nice singers in town. There was everybody went, and that was, like I said, Eastern Star. They met twice a month, had a big crowd because they'd go and play musical chairs or something like that. Make a big round loop, and put chairs, everybody sit in it, and the woman, Carolyn Early, she would play the organ. She was a beautiful piano player, an organ player, and all of a sudden she'd stop, and who didn't have a chair to sit in? But that was the end of that. You do that till there was no more people left. We called them musical chairs, and they played different things similar to like that, yeah.
And
they had dramas. They put dramas on. I never was in one. I think Diddy was in one once. Yeah, she was a good sport. Yeah, yeah. And
because I don't think that most people realize, how much really good talent and entertainment they had at the. And it was almost at least twice a month.
Yeah.
There'd be something.
Yeah.
And of course, high school basketball games all the time.
All the
time.
time.
The winter.
We used to play Litchfield a lot, and I remember going out there that you had to be careful that you didn't hit the stovepipe, knock the stovepipe off with the ball. When you were playing basketball, we had to be careful we didn't knock the trying to heat the building, it was
right.
so cold, yeah.
I remember that.
But we used to have a lot more snow than we do now. A lot more snow. I got pictures of Route 9 when Kenneth stand up, and he was a tall man. He was tall and thin, and it was way up to his shoulders right on Route 9, around the flat there. Yeah.
Well, you know about the snowstorms because your father was road commissioner for many. I said, you know about snowstorms because your father was road commissioner for many years.
Yeah, we used to plow. We used to go plowing with him. Us kids, we used to go because we would work on the jack, in the plow. Yeah. And, but we all had our chores to do, but everybody did too. You know what I mean? Kids nowadays, they don't have no chores. And whatever we had to eat, it was put on the table, and we didn't say we didn't like. We didn't want it, because if we didn't eat it, we went to bed hungry. There was no potato chips and none of that stuff, no.
Yeah, probably you never had to do this, but people find it hard to believe. Guys would stand in the back of the truck for sanding the roads.
Yes.
And they do it for miles and miles.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, that was really, so, how was life like, right after you've had both of your children and they start going to school? How did your life continue from then on? I know your husband died early. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah,
He was in his, I don't know if he was in his 60s or not.
Yes, he was. He was only
Okay,
63. Yeah. He's
Okay,
been
I know
gone
he died.
37 years.
Yeah.
I've lived here and
Yeah.
kept things going.
Yeah. I find it very impressive. I respect you a lot, for that, Are there any other just random stories you'd like to tell us that popped through your head? I know losing. I wouldn't want to get into it was terrible that you lost your son Lyle also very young.
Yeah.
I know that how hard that can be. But just any random stories you might know about Barbara Sanborn or Diddy or any of them.
Yeah, well, we got together. We still got together, all of us girls. Yeah. There was 4 of us had birthdays all within month of April. Yeah. And Diddy's was in June. But there was Elma Fisher and Barbara Sanborn, and then there was a Gayton girl, and myself, and then we was all April birthdays. We used to get together 2 or 3 times in the summertime and go up to Barbara's camp there. She made it our home on the lake there. We used to do that, and I belonged to the Star, and I was a grand officer in the Star, so I traveled a lot for a while, for 1 year, really, about almost every night. But right after the mills closed down, I went to work. My brother Walter got me the job, and my daughter-in-law wanted to go to work. That was Lyle's wife, and they had 2 children, and then they had 3, and so they had the youngest one, and they were in school. So she got a job I was working part-time if they needed extra help over to Oak Hill High, and I washed dishes for them. And so anyway, Janet took the job at Oak Hill High, and I had Randy. That was the youngest one. He was I think he was 3 or 4. And she would bring him over here at 9 in the morning, and then she'd pick him up at 2. And I went to work in the mill. I was working second shift. So I was working not the mill, at Bates College. I was working at Bates College, and I worked the night shift. Well, not the night shift, at nighttime. And I went from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 9 usually. So I had him. I was tied, and my days off was Thursday and Friday, but yet I had him Thursday and Friday because his mother was working 5 days a week. So I did that for 2 or 3 years, kept Randy, so that she could, kept the 2 jobs, so that she'd say, don't you let him get everything all messed up. I'd take a tablecloth and throw it right over the table in the kitchen, and he made him a tent every day and played underneath the table.
I know I lost my train of thought, but what would you find, and at the end of most of these oral histories, what would you find is some of the biggest changes in the Sabattus you know now and the Sabattus you grew up in? What would you say are the biggest, or even the biggest change?
Well, people don't have no pride in anything no more.
Say whatever you want to say.
I don't think. You know what I mean? Yeah. They didn't have this, they have everything now, so they don't bother. They got houses, well, it's a place to live, you know what I mean? But they don't, some of these old houses in town here, they're pretty, you know what I mean? But they've just got torn all to pieces and stuff like that. Yeah. I noticed the one down the other week where we come up, I don't know what they call it, by the convent there. That house right on the corner where you stop there, the woodwork is all fixed, so beautiful, yoked, you know what I mean? and everything. They kept the houses. They really took pride in fixing them up. They used, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Now they don't care.
No.
No.